BBC Radio Berkshire.
So, fast approaching a news time. Let me tell you what's happening after 3 o'clock. Here's a question for you, right? What do you do when you get made redundant from your steady job in a bank? Answer: you become a private investigator. Well, you do if your name is Mike Rees and you've got a background in investigating fraud and tracing customers who have skipped away owing money. He's our guest at just after 3 o'clock. What's it like actually being a private investigator? Is it glamorous or is it really seedy? Stay tuned and you'll find out. In just a moment, we're going to put on our shades, turn up our collars and hang out outside strangers' windows as we meet a private investigator. What is that like? Is it glamorous? Is it seedy? Maybe it's just dull. Find out next after Van Morrison here on BBC Radio Berkshire. So, just say hello.
Hello.
That's a private investigator, right? To my knowledge, he's the first one I've ever met. But although I suppose, if I was being traced, if I was being trailed, I might have met one and not known it, mightn't I?
You could well have.
You see, I expected you to come in disguise. In fact, this could be a disguise.
This could be a double bluff. I could be doing surveillance on you this minute.
Yeah. Oh. So, we've got a private detective in the studio. I'm quite excited about the notion. We'll find out about his life and times. His name's Mike Rees. We'll meet him next. Our next guest, you heard him just then, private investigator. He had a long career in banking, and his career included sort of tracing customers who had skipped off owing money and working on fraud cases. Then he got made redundant. So instead of pursuing another career in banking, he decided to follow one of the most interesting parts of his former job. He became a private investigator. So what do they actually do? Mike Rees, welcome.
Thank you.
So first of all, are you wearing a disguise? Is this your real face?
No, this is what I look like most of the time.
Okay, I'm not sure if I believe you. But, tell us what you do. So you are a private investigator, yes?
I am a private investigator.
Is that what it has on your cards?
It does, yes.
Have you got a card there?
I've got one in my jacket pocket,
okay.
but and it always gives me a bit of a kick when I hand it over and it says Mike Rees, private investigator.
Private eye. Okay, tell me what you do all day.
Well, it depends. We do a fair bit of computer-based work, so it might be I'm sitting in the office doing sort of tracing work, sort of general investigation and so on. But obviously the more exciting part is when you get up and out and you're doing surveillance and following people around. So there's a huge variety.
Tracing work, what's that?
Well, it's when people have trying to find somebody. So it could be family members that they've lost touch with, or friends they've lost touch with, or even beneficiaries to wills. You know, there's a will, somebody's been left money, they can't find them. So the solicitors dealing with the will would ask us to try and locate them.
Oh, it's just like in the films.
Yeah,
you do that then. So it's not all crime and people feeling wronged.
No.
You actually do some some people feel really good.
Well, hopefully we make our clients feel good all the time. Because some people, I heard in your introduction earlier on, you were suggesting it could be a seedy job.
Well, I asked the question. You go through people. Do you go through people's bins?
No.
I bet you do.
No, I wouldn't do that.
Why?
Well, first of all, it's too messy.
You're a private investigator who doesn't like to get messy.
Yeah, but actually, it would be illegal to go through somebody's bins and take stuff away, because even though they've thrown it into the bin, it's still their property. So it wouldn't be legal to take things out of people's bins.
Okay, you got to say that, but you're just like preserving your cover. Okay. What sort of people are your clients? Is it individuals? Is it businesses?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of three. I think there's three main areas: individuals, private individuals that we deal with, companies, so a fair bit of corporate work, but also solicitors. I mentioned looking for beneficiaries and wills. That would usually come from solicitors. We also do process serving.
What's that, process serving?
Well, process serving is serving legal papers on people.
Oh, you're the bloke. How does that work then? Explain to us what you actually have to do.
Well, all you have to do is to turn up, identify the individual, and give them the papers. Now, contrary
to... So a court issues a summons, say?
Yeah, it could be, I don't know, a summons, divorce papers, non-molestation order, where somebody may have been, beating up his wife or something like that.
And to warn to stay away. So
there's an injunction.
So an order is an actual physical piece of paper?
Absolutely, it's a physical piece of paper. My job then is to go to the address, identify the individual, and then hand him the papers. And contrary to popular belief, he hasn't got to touch them, or you haven't got to sort of, make sure they touch him. Once you've made him aware that these are court papers for him, then even if he throws them back at you, they're deemed to be served, and the job is done.
So does that? I'm guessing when you what do you call that, process serving?
Process serving. Yeah.
When you do that, they're rarely happy to see you.
Generally, they're not. Although a lot of people understand that the papers are coming. And some of them are, to companies, statutory demands to a company where they owe money and they've been taken to court and we have to serve the papers. It's the first stage of bankruptcy. So more often than not, they know it's coming and they just accept it as a fact of life.
So you've never had anyone react badly to your presence?
No, luckily I haven't. I mean, I think if you go in and you sort of act aggressively when you are trying to deliver them, then you're likely to get aggression back. But if you just take it nice and calm, after all, you're only like a postman, you're just delivering, and you're friendly towards them, then most people just accept them without any issue.
So what it is, I'm just here, I've got this court summons, you have to go to court, there you are. Not my fault, mate.
Yep, just absolutely right. I mean, I did have one the other day where I had to serve an ASBO, antisocial behaviour order, and I knew from papers I had that the police had actually been out to this address about 40 times in the previous month. So I was a little bit nervous about that. So just went down to the local police station, said I need to go and do this, and the desk sergeant said, "Ooh, you don't want to do that on your own." So they very kindly sent 2 officers along with me, and everything went nice and smooth. So a little bit of pre-planning sometimes helps.
You see, I hadn't even thought about an ASBO, an antisocial behaviour order, again, is an actual physical piece of paper.
Yes, it needs to be served on the individual. Yeah,
and this will be a piece of paper that says you must cease and desist from whatever activity.
Yeah, depending on the circumstances. Yes,
and that wouldn't be done by an officer of the court. That would be done by you.
Yeah. Yeah, the solicitors dealing with the case would get hold of a private investigator or a process server, and that's what we do.
This is your business?
It is.
What's it called?
It's called Answers Investigation. So I own and run the Berkshire side of Answers, but we also have offices around the south coast as well, and around sort of Southampton, Bournemouth, Guildford, up in towards London.
So my idea of private investigators has of course come from telly. And so I'm guessing that from my wide experience of the breed, that you either live in your car or you operate out of seedy offices and have a leggy blonde in reception. How far am I from the truth?
Quite a bit, I'm afraid. I do spend a fair bit of time in my car. It has to be said, because if you're doing surveillance, you're in your car quite a lot. At the moment, I operate from an office at home. And I'm sure my wife would be delighted to be called a leggy blonde.
Is she blonde?
Blondish.
Okay. I won't ask about her legginess, because that's not my business. We're going to play a record in a sec. Tell us, first of all, what's the best thing about this job of yours?
Oh, I think it's the variety and the different types of things I get to do and the different types of things I get to see. It's completely different from the sort of 9 to 5 of working in banking.
Do you get to carry a gun?
Afraid not.
I just thought I'd ask. All right, first of your records, we're going to play you at Lindisfarne. Tell us why.
Yeah, Lindisfarne is sort of was a record that was out when I was sort of a teenager, and spending a lot of time with my mates and out looking for girls and whatever you do when you're a teenager. And this was sort of the soundtrack of the time. And when I hear it, it just sort of takes me back.
We're talking to Mike Rees in this portion of the programme. He's a private investigator. He covers Berkshire. We'll play you Lindisfarne, Meet Me on the Corner, and have more from him. We'll find out about some of his cases and about his background. So you're live here on BBC Radio Berkshire with Phil Gale. Lindisfarne, Meet Me on the Corner. That's the music choice of Mike Rees, PI. He's a private investigator. How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it coming up to 2 years now, since I was made redundant from the bank.
We're going to talk about that, because you were with this bank, 30-odd years,
Yeah, it was sort of 33 years.
That's quite a career change. I think that's quite exciting. So, tell us about some of your case. Tell us about the first case you ever worked on, then.
Well, the first case I ever worked on was after doing some training with the guys at Answers. They rang me and said, are you ready to go out and do a surveillance on your own? I said, okay, I can do that. What they didn't tell me at the time was it was an all-night job. And it was a case where a company thought that one of their employees was moonlighting and was working the night shift at one place as well as the day shift at their factory, which concerned them because he was a forklift driver and clearly safety implications. So my job was to sit outside his house until he left to go on the night shift, follow him there, watch him go in, and then sit there all night until he came back out again, so that we had evidence that he'd stayed there all night and couldn't just say, I just went in for 10 minutes to see a friend. So I fell for that one, really. I mean, I ended up with that because nobody else wanted to do it. But as it happened, he didn't leave his house, so I didn't have to spend all of the night.
So how long did you have to sit outside his house to realise that he wasn't going to leave? Because he might have just gone later.
Yes, he could have. I think the night shifts usually start around 10 o'clock, so I was there till about midnight, and no movement, all the lights went off, so clearly nothing was going to happen from there. So I was then able to go home. Did go back first thing next morning, and nothing again. Stayed there till probably about 9 o'clock. Nothing happened, so we knocked that one on the head.
Okay, so that's you sat in a car with a notebook and a camera.
In a car, that's right.
And a flask.
I'm wondering what I'm going to do if I need to go to the toilet.
So what do you do?
Well, it's a bit of pre-planning first of all, and obviously you try and relieve yourself before you start the job. Sometimes there's some way you can sort of sneak away and do it without sort of giving away the fact that you're there.
Do people ever know that you're following? Do you ever get made, as they say in the films?
You can do, and it's not so much usually the individual that you're following, but it's somebody else. If you're sitting watching a house down the street, then the guy whose house you're sitting next to might come out and say, "What are you doing sitting there?"
Has that ever happened?
Yes, that's happened.
And what do you do?
Well, you just have to come up with a sort of a cover story. And the last one I think I did, somebody came out, and luckily I'd noticed a house for sale in the street. And I said, I'm just waiting for the estate agent. I'm going to look at that house over there in a minute.
So you've never had the police come tapping on your window saying, "What's going on here?"
No.
What's all this then? What was your worst case?
I don't know. The saddest one, I think, was a case we had recently, which was one of these internet romance scams, where a vulnerable person gets taken by fraudsters on the internet. And when that happened, I had a lady from Texas rang me and asked whether I did private investigation, and could I do some background checking on a guy in Bracknell for her who she'd met on the internet and fallen in love with. This guy was supposedly an American professor working in a big high-profile job in the space industry in Bracknell. Now, of course, she didn't realise that Bracknell hasn't really got much of a space industry. So I did some background checking, couldn't find him anywhere, no record of him being around. The address that he gave wasn't a residential area, it was a sort of a trading estate. So it didn't look too good, but she took some convincing. She was obviously in love with this guy. And she sent me some pictures. She said, look, just to prove that he loves me, he sent me some top-secret photographs of this space tractor, which is going to be used on other planets. And when I got the pictures, it was very laughable. It was a Hummer with lots of gadgets stuck onto it. But I did manage to find this exact same photograph on the internet, and in fact what it was a robotic vehicle that a university in America had built to race across the Mojave Desert. It's something that they do as part of their science stuff over there. And of course, once I showed her that, she realised then it was a scam. And at that stage, she told me she'd already sent him $10,000. And that he was asking for more, which was why she'd asked to get him checked out. So I then found out she was, I think, 80-something. Her husband had died 5 years earlier. She obviously was very vulnerable, and of course these fraudsters and scammers take advantage. So
you broke that news to her, and then you've got to say, okay, so this isn't what you wanted. She's probably heartbroken, and now here's my bill.
Well, that's right. The strange thing was that she'd mentioned sending money, and I said, well, whatever you do, don't send any money. You should never send money to people you don't know. Oh, and by the way, here's my bill. But no, but she was fine. I mean, she was clearly upset by the whole thing. But I've had a couple of emails from her more recently thanking me and saying that, now she really understands, and she's delighted that we did find out before any more money went astray.
So what's it like then, having to break that sort of news to someone?
Well, not very pleasant, but then at the same time, it's for their own benefit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was to help her. And not just because of the money, because she clearly felt she loved this chap, even though she'd never met him.
Oh, do you know, I thought I had a heart of stone, but that's almost moved me, that. Do you have to wear disguises?
Not probably in the way that you would think of a disguise, but, we do wear I do change my jacket occasionally if I'm following somebody, so I try and look a bit different.
Is there a technique to following someone without being spotted?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing is to keep out of their field of vision. If they don't see you at all, then they're not going to know you're there. If they see you, then you have to sort of, strike one sort of life off. And if you strike too many lives off, then you have to give up because it's going to become obvious.
Knows you're there.
So yeah, you try and keep out of their field of vision. Following in cars is fairly difficult as well. Whenever you see it on the TV, there are always 3 or 4 cars behind, driving through town or through London. Well, in reality, if you're 3 or 4 cars behind, you've had it, because if the traffic lights change and the cars in front of you stop, they've gone. So driving through in the middle of a city, you have to be pretty much right up behind them, So
that, isn't there a greater danger then?
There is a greater danger, and we would usually try and do that type of surveillance with more than one vehicle. So, a small team of people with 2, maybe 3 vehicles, but of course the trouble is then that pushes the invoice up, and the customers haven't always got the budget for that. But in an ideal world, you'd have at least 2 vehicles, so you could sort of interchange.
So, never been involved in a car chase?
No. Well, I had to follow people who've driven at quite speed. They, of course, don't realise that you're behind them, or hopefully they don't realise you're behind them. And some people do get on the motorways fairly quickly. Obviously, I always stay within the speed limit, as you would imagine. But no car chases.
Playing a Billy Joel now. Tell us why. Oh yes, that's right, Billy Joel.
Billy Joel, yeah. This, my wife was interviewed, funnily enough, on our wedding day by BBC Radio Wales, I think it was.
Right.
And she was...
I noticed the lilt there.
You did you? Yeah, it's given me away. She was interviewed, I think, as what they called the bride of the day at the time, and they spoke to her about the forthcoming wedding, and then she had the opportunity to choose a song, and this was the song that she chose. So this takes me back to my wedding day.
I'm learning loads this afternoon. We're talking to Mike Rees, who's a private investigator. That was a heartbreaking story you told about that poor woman in Texas who'd been taken for a mug by an internet scammer. What else do you investigate? Do you get into computers?
Yes, we do. We've got a computer forensics department, and we do a fair bit of that work as well.
So what would you be looking for?
Well, it's interesting because, people tell their computers more than they would tell their best friends. And once you put it on your computer, it's pretty much there to stay. Anybody who thinks that once they've deleted something, it's gone, is sadly mistaken, because it is still there. And what we can do is to bring back, whether it be old emails, photographs, documents, whatever has been supposedly deleted. So this often is the case with companies where they think that somebody's been misusing the system, possibly in some kind of fraud. And we can take a look at the system. We'll download it onto one of our own computers, and then we'll run some programs across it which will bring back all the information, complete with sort of the times that things happened. So we can actually show what an individual has done, if he emailed somebody, if he copied something from that work. So that can help a firm understand whether one of their employees possibly is sort of committing fraud or just misusing the system.
So in this digital age, everything you do on your computer effectively remains there. Nothing's ever completely deleted.
Absolutely, it's pretty much there.
So do you ever get... So you would do that commercially. Do you get, spouses, partners, trying to find out whether or not their partner has been, emailing or getting involved with someone?
Yes, we do. That happens as well, and we can sort of pull back those. We'll generally only do that if it's a sort of a jointly owned computer, so that our client, the party who wants us to look at it, has an interest in the computer and owns it as well. So that means that she or he is telling us, please will you do this work for me on my computer.
Oh, okay.
We wouldn't sort of just take a complete other computer and, nothing to do with the client, because that would be an infringement of privacy, really.
But, I can see that. It's hard to know whether you're saying this because you do it or because you have to be seen to be staying on the right side of the law.
I think you mentioned earlier that some people think that this industry may be seedy. What we try to do is to ensure that we don't do anything seedy and we stay the right side of the law, and we act responsibly.
Your hands are clean. So what do you think then when you see the newspaper headlines like the ones that have concerned the hacking of various royals and the newspapers who get private investigators to hack into people's phones? What do you think when you see that?
Well, it's a sad fact, isn't it? As in any job and in any industry, there are some people who, bring it into disrepute. And it's sad because, it does colour people's judgments. And even though you may have been sort of joking in the way you said it at the start of the programme, those are the sort of things that some people honestly believe. That it's seedy, that it's a bit tacky, that we're prepared to break the law.
But I suppose only because there are people out there who will do that. There are people who were hacking into people's phones and going through people's bins.
Yeah, absolutely there are. But there are in any job you look at,
yes.
any profession. There's good people and there's bad people.
So does that mean you will turn jobs down? I come to you and say, right, okay, I really need to get some dirt on my boss. If he's listening. And so I want you to go through his bins and sort out his phone. And I offered you... you see, this is how fanciful it gets, because I was going to say I offer you a whole load of money, but that's certainly not going to happen. And I offered you a whole load of money. You would sling me out on my ear, would you? We
wouldn't entertain that sort of thing. What we'd probably do is to say to you, well, what is it you're trying to achieve, and is there a legal way of doing this? Because often people come to us and they've been watching too much television and they think we can do all sorts of stuff. People think we've got helicopters that we can follow people in, and it's a bit silly, really. But often there's other ways that we can achieve what the client wants without breaking the law. So we'll ask them what they want. We'll come up with some suggestions. But you're right, we will turn down work if we don't think it's right.
Maybe we'll have a word later. How much information do you need on someone in order to effectively tell me the story of their life?
It depends. It could be very little. I mean, it's somebody whose name is John Smith, then we're not going to get very far with any searches on that because there are so many of them. But if somebody's got a more unusual name, maybe like Phil Gale, we might be able to get a lot more information from just the name. But clearly, the more information that we have up front, then the more information that we're likely to be able to come up with.
Could you get hold of my credit card details?
No, that would be illegal.
I know, that's why I said, could you?
I'm sure that there are people who could do that. It's not something that we have any experience of, and we wouldn't entertain.
All right. You've been doing this 2 years. Let's talk briefly about your life before. You were a bank manager.
Yes, I worked for a bank called HFC Bank, which was part of the HSBC group more recently. Been with them for 30-odd years. I started back in South Wales, where I managed a number of branches down there. And in fact, when I was doing that, that's when I sort of first got involved with some sort of fraud-type work, where customers had moved away still owing money, and I would get involved with tracing them. Then moved up to this area 20-odd years ago to move to a head office role, and again got involved, my first sort of connection with private investigators, because I was a claims manager in an insurance company within the bank, and obviously would brief investigators to go and look at what we consider to be fraudulent claims. Oh,
okay. So I stick in a claim that says, I've had my camera and my £300 watch stolen while I was on a cheap holiday. You would look at that and say, that doesn't look... Someone would look at that and say, that doesn't look quite right.
That's right. So, I mean, the claims that we were tending to work on were sickness claims. So somebody would say, I can't possibly go to work because I've, injured my leg and I can't walk without crutches. And we were dubious about that. So if we felt it was the appropriate case, we'd send an investigator and they would come back with either photographs or video of the guy playing football or, whatever. So,
did you ever feel a little sullied, a little dirty about this?
Well, no, because if you think about it, that individual was cheating us, and as a result, other customers' premiums are higher. So, there's always two sides to every story.
Okay. So that lasted 30-odd years, and then you got made redundant.
Yeah, I was made redundant, as a lot of people in financial services were, at the tail end of 2008. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now?
Well, just before you come to that, did you know it was coming?
No. Complete surprise.
Can you remember that? Well, presumably you can. Tell us about the day that you learned.
Well, interestingly, I'd been on holiday. My wife and I had been to Madeira, came back in Monday morning, and at the time I was the head of compliance in the bank, so it was a sort of senior management role. And I think at about 9:15, I had a phone call from the MD's office. Can I pop round and see him? So when I went round, I should have seen the writing on the wall, because the HR director, personnel director, was also in the room. and they just broke it to me then that they were sort of doing a bit of a restructure, and that I was no longer needed.
32 years there.
Yeah.
And in those days, a job in a bank was a job for life.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. What goes through your mind?
Well, I was devastated when they told me. I mean, I had no idea. There were redundancies going on at the time, but I had no idea that I'd be involved at all. So yeah, absolutely devastated initially. But then, you know, you get used to the fact and you know that life goes on. So that was when I thought, well, I need to try and do something different.
So you didn't try and go for another banking job?
No, I felt that after that sort of time, I'd had enough of working in the sort of corporate environment, you know, and anybody who works in a sort of a big corporation will know that there's loads of politics and all that sort of stuff goes on, and I was a little bit fed up of all of that, so I decided to try something else. I had no idea what I wanted to do, just knew that I didn't really want to go back and do what I'd been doing before. But then as I was writing my CV out, and I'd sort of writing down these things about being a claims manager, or in the more recent part of my job doing investigations on staff fraud, I thought, well, actually, I really liked those parts of the job. Maybe I could do something with that. And the idea of a private investigator came into my head. And then I'd think, don't be stupid. You know, you've been watching too much television. You can't be a private investigator. But it kept coming back, and it kept coming back. So in the end, I decided to look into it and got in touch with a number of firms. But the guys at Answers, they've been doing it for sort of 10, 15 years, and they came across really well. I was impressed by the organisation there, so essentially bought into that business to run the Berkshire area.
Okay, we've got to wrap it up quite quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us what is the best thing now about your job as a private investigator.
Well, I've worked sort of 30-odd years in the bank, sort of 9 till 5, or usually probably 8 till 7 most days. It's the variety and the freedom that I now have. You know, every day is different. I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. The variety of things I come across, you wouldn't believe. You know, it's not just the same old banking things. So, you know, I might be on the computer doing fraud. I might be out, you know, following somebody. I might be in a company helping them to identify fraud, you know, internal fraud. So it's just the variety. It's just really refreshing.
Most fascinating, most satisfying case you've ever worked on?
I think probably that one I mentioned earlier with the lady from Texas, because I really felt for her, and it was satisfying to know that I'd saved her, you know, any more money, but also sort of any more sort of emotion as well.
Final record for you, Rainbow. Why?
Well, Rainbow, this has been out a while, obviously, but I came across it more recently when I got it on some compilation disc, and I just think it's a fantastic record for driving to, and I do a fair amount of driving now, and you've got this pumping out on the stereo. It's great.
Good talking to you, Mike. Thanks for coming in.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Rainbow, since you've been gone, music choice of our guest there, Berkshire PI, Mike Rees. He's left me his card as well. And he actually says private investigator on there. Fantastic.